I have developed multiple triggers from this event. I have everything from claustrophobia to social anxiety.
I don't think I have developed any major triggers. I just don't trust men.
I have developed triggers from this event. When a stranger touches me on my waist or my back, I almost get flashbacks.
I didn't develop any triggers from the event, but I was generally afraid of men for a really, really long time.
A main trigger for me is like when guys are talking about the Me Too movement or anything like that, and they're just like, not all those bitches get raped vaginally. Some people think that sexual assault, like rape, is vaginally, but I was orally.
I have developed triggers from this event. A lot of times physical touch makes me uncomfortable and I can't handle it.
The first person was my middle school friend's older brother. I was 14, he was 20 to 21 years old. And the second person was my boyfriend at the time.
He lived in my neighborhood. He was 16, I was 8 or 9, and I was friends with his little sister. And whenever I came over to play, he would steal my toys or my stuffed animals and tell me that if I wanted them back, I had to suck his dick. So I did, because I didn't know what was wrong at the time.
My perpetrator was a bartender at a bar that I had gone to with my roommates when I was studying abroad.
I didn't know him personally, but he was around my house a lot because he was my oldest brother's friend. I was 6 at the time, and they were teenagers.
My perpetrator was this guy that I met in a summer school program. Years later, I thought that I could go get coffee with him and it would be as innocent as that.
I have been assaulted twice. First time happened when I was 14 years old to 16 years old. He was a family friend. And then the second time it was my boyfriend. He took my virginity by raping me. I thought, oh, well, he's my boyfriend, so he wouldn't, this must not be rape.
I don't feel satisfied at all with my first rapist's consequences because he got away. The police said there wasn't enough evidence for them to put him behind bars, and they decided that they would just give us a restraining order instead. And he broke that multiple times and still never got any punishment. As for my ex, at the time, I didn't say anything and I didn't understand that what he was doing was wrong because I thought that since he was a boyfriend, there was no such thing as assault from a boyfriend.
I am satisfied with the consequences because I never had to see him again after everything was settled. And as far as I know, he's still in jail.
He has received no consequence. So no, I'm not satisfied.
He never actually got caught. I didn't ever say anything. No one ever really knew about it.
He didn't get anything. I didn't report it. I didn't tell anyone. It took me a while to understand that I had been assaulted.
Neither of them received any consequences. The second one, he doesn't know that I told anyone. And the first one, he did apologize to me, but he never really got any consequences from it.
My rapist did not apologize. He actually thought it was funny that what he did to me actually traumatized me. My ex, when he came out of rehab, he did apologize.
I don't know if he apologized.
No, they didn't. Even during the situation, I remember this man almost insinuating and saying things that insinuated that I owed it to him.
He never apologized or admitted that he even did it, let alone that what he did was wrong.
Oh, I have even told him that I thought I was assaulted. He thought it was fun.
The first time, the perpetrator, he did apologize. I think it was mostly him apologizing for the fact that people found out and not really for the event. Second one, he never apologized.
I've been to therapy ever since the first rape happened. I was 15 when I started going. Therapy has helped, but it hasn't exactly fixed everything.
I did go to therapy, and we did this thing where the therapist, she asked me to write down all the things I wanted to happen to him, and a lot of them were pretty violent. And we wrote them down and put them in a box. And a few years later, I burned all the pieces of paper, and I think it did help.
Last spring semester, I decided to go to CAPS It was a pretty traumatic event for me. I have not been back to a therapist since. The woman I talked to made me feel as if what happened was my fault. I specifically remember her saying, well, you need to be more careful next time. I am careful with everything I do. And then the other thing I remember she said, okay, well, it sounds like to me you need about 3 or 4 more sessions and then you should be totally fine. That's not really how sexual assault and rape and being harassed works. It's something that sticks with you forever, and it's not a matter of going to therapy 3 or 4 times and then just being fine.
I haven't been to therapy. Mostly I've just dealt with it on my own. I mostly just pushed it down and pretended it never happened.
I haven't been to therapy in a while. So I kind of just talked to my dog or talked to my one friend, told her that this happened to me.
Yeah, I have been to therapy and I do feel like it helped. I thought I had dealt with it by myself until it all came out again.
I told my school counselor a month after I was raped by my friend's brother. She questioned if it was actually rape. And then when I told her the age of the man, that's when she took it serious. As for my ex, I actually never told anyone until probably a good 3 years after.
I'm not the one who told my family. My friend, his little sister, is the one that told her mom, and her mom told my family, and I probably would never have told anyone if it weren't for her.
I think the first time I ever admitted I was sexually assaulted was I told one of my close friends, and it was just because I was drunk. And I had some triggers from that guy I'd started seeing, and then the guy and I went back to my house, and I told him. I wish I hadn't told him. I'm very happy I told my friend.
It was 4 years later when I told somebody for the first time, and she kind of just made it seem by her response that it wasn't a big deal. So because of that, I didn't tell anybody else for another 5 years. I was 15 and I told my sister.
I waited like a week. Then I had told them what had happened, and they were like, girl, you were assaulted.
The first time, I didn't tell anyone for 3 years after it first happened, so when I was 17. And I didn't really even realize it was a big deal when I first told my friend, and he was the first one who said, hey, that's rape. It took me another 2 years to tell my family. The second time, 2 months later, I broke up with him because of a lot of other reasons. He was really abusive. I was so manipulated in the relationship that there were a lot of things that I didn't really remember because he made me feel like they didn't exist. After I broke up with him, I started getting flashbacks of things that actually happened.
No one has necessarily blamed me for what happened to me either times, but when it came to telling people about my ex, they thought that because I was raped at 14, that what he did to me was just going to be seen as rape to me, because that's all I'm going to think now is if someone touches me weird, I'm going to think it's rape.
I am incredibly lucky to have not been blamed because I was a kid, and it seems like kids don't get blamed for these kind of things.
I guess the only person was that therapist. My parents don't know, my family doesn't know. I'm not exactly sure what their reactions would be. I love my family and they're great and they're supportive and I love them, but I do believe I would receive the questions of, were you not being careful? Were you drinking too much? What were you wearing? Why didn't you go home with your roommates? Well, it's because I was drugged. I just don't really want to have to deal with that.
No one's ever blamed me for what happened, luckily. I was really young, so not many people know anyway.
I do. I blame myself. I truly blame myself. My friend who had texted me, she kind of said, girl, you let him in your house. You did that to yourself. What else was going to happen?
From the first event, I got a lot of reactions of, well, why didn't you just tell him to stop? I mean, why didn't you just shove him away or tell him to get off of you? I don't really know why. And the same with the second time. I mean, I've had people ask me, like if you already asked him to stop and he just ignored it, why didn't you, actually physically resist? And again, I don't know why. I think that in that moment, you kind of become paralyzed.
The counselor understood what happened after I explained his age, and then police had interviewed us and stuff like that. But when it came to my ex, a lot of people just thought that because I was raped once, I was just thinking what he was doing was rape.
They believed me, and they believed my friend, but I don't know for sure if they believe everything I say.
Luckily, the people I have told, besides that one guy that I was seeing at the time, everyone has been incredibly supportive and helpful.
There hasn't been anyone that I've come across that hasn't believed me.
A few days ago, I told my mom I was gonna do this, and she was like, "Oh, you're talking about the thing that happened in high school." And I said, "No, I'm talking about another thing that happened to me." She kind of looked at me funny, and she was like, you know that, like, you can't make up stuff. You can't make up stuff. Like, people out there have really been assaulted, and now there's this new thing that happened to you. You can't be making stuff up so you can be in people's videos.
I was really scared that people wouldn't believe me, because when a girl has had multiple interactions with sexual assault, the immediate jump is, well, is she lying? Is she making this up for attention?
I have been sexually assaulted multiple times and by multiple people. I was 14 when my rapist had started touching me and slamming me against a wall, and then he raped me. And then my ex, 2 years into our relationship, he started touching me in my sleep. I'd wake up the next morning in excruciating pain.
This was the incident at 8 or 9 was the only major event where I was sexually assaulted.
I really only consider my one time being absolutely sexually assaulted. Sometimes I wonder in my brain if that guy that I started seeing after, because oftentimes he would do things that I would tell him I wasn't comfortable with.
I have been sexually assaulted multiple times by multiple people.
Like I was saying, I was assaulted in high school by a guy I knew, a lover, and he assaulted me in a stairwell of the Tucson High.
I have been sexually assaulted multiple times and by multiple people.
I don't feel like anything was resolved with my rapists. When it came to my ex, I think now I am okay, just that he acknowledged that he did something wrong.
I'm content, and I often forget it even happened. I think my brain blocked out a lot of the memories, like brains do with trauma.
No, absolutely not. The thing that really bothers me about this situation is I loved being abroad, but I lived on a street called Aribao 39. I loved that street, and that's the street that I was assaulted on. When I think of that name, I think of him.
I'm content with myself and the way that I handled it and the person that I grew up to be, but he was never punished.
No, I'm not content. He fucked my face without my consent.
I feel content with the first event. It's just kind of a part of my past. The second time, I'm still a little raw about that. I guess because I never got closure.
I constantly live with terrible anxiety and PTSD, but I think I've grown a lot and I've healed a lot more than I ever thought I could.
I feel rage because I think about what happened to me, and then I think about what happens to other kids, and I think about how I am powerless to stop it.
For months, I did not feel like my skin was my own. I used to take these burning, scalding, hot showers, and I would just scratch my fingers on my skin, trying to get him off of me. It is something that makes you feel incredibly alone.
There's just a lot weighing me down. It's almost like my torso is being constricted, and that feeling where you aren't really comfortable in your own skin.
I'm still dealing with it, I think. The emotions I feel really are hatred towards me more than him. And hatred towards him, kind of, because he probably doesn't know he doesn't think he assaulted me, probably.
I feel sad about how often this happens and feel really angry. I wish that he could get a feeling for how much it affects me and what he took from me. And I've had to deal with a lot of anger towards myself too, because I guess subconsciously I didn't think that someone who was strong would let this happen twice.